So this live stream is titled To the Perfectionist. This one is for you. Okay. So I was thinking, I think it was either today or it was yesterday. I think it might have been yesterday or the day before. I don't know. But I was thinking about, I think it was today. I think it was today I was thinking about this. What I was thinking about was basically people that are perfectionists. Okay. And what I mean by perfectionists, people that try to live their life as perfect as possibly they can. And this is not to bash those people. I mean, I don't really consider myself a perfectionist because I am definitely rough around the edges. I have taken a lot of risks. I have done a lot of things that are just not perfect at all. Like most people would, you know, not take the, chances I took and the risks I took. Now, don't get me wrong, it's levels to this because to some people, I would appear as a perfectionist. Like, for example, people call them pookies or thugs or whatever. To someone that's like a street guy that lives and eats and sleeps in the streets and does all kinds of illegal activities, they would look at me probably as a perfectionist. But I by far have definitely um I am not a perfectionist in the sense of that. Like it's people that's way more polished, way more sharp, way more accomplished even than I am. Now, I am accomplished. I mean, I'm not gonna run off my resume, but I'm a Navy vet. I mean, I don't know the percentage. I guess I could Google it or ask Chat GPT or whatever. What's the percentage of people that graduated or boot camp in the Navy and went out to the fleet and or basically been in the Navy, basically. I don't know, but I'm one of those. I don't. I forgot the attrition rate for Navy boot camp, but I am a Navy veteran. Okay. Uh, I've also went to college, and I went to college for a long time. But I mean, I've done a lot of things. I do have some accomplishments, but I mean, it's people that have a way more accomplishments than I have. It's people that are very, very serious about everything. There's some people, they live their life like it's a book. Like they follow the laws and they follow every single thing they could possibly can. Like they don't take any chances whatsoever. Like those people are kind of like what I'm talking about. But again, it's levels to this because it's like a street dude will probably look at me like I'm a perfectionist. Like this guy, he's just perfect. He just does everything. No, by far, I am far from that. Even I have I did have a background. I literally had a background. I got it sealed. I got my record sealed, but I have definitely I definitely have a let's just say I have a rap sheet. I actually, in order to get my record exposed or sealed, I had to literally go to Chicago police headquarters. You know, I mean, I shouldn't be laughing about this, but literally, I had to pay for my rap sheet. And when I saw it, I'm like, damn, it's like I'm a gangster or some shit. Like I got it got my picture and you know I lost everybody on that. See, but it's all good. I know perfectionists. This is for you guys. I know people. The average person probably is a perfectionist, But the thing is like when I saw my picture, I was like, damn, like, it was like, wow. I was when I was in my 20s, I used to do a lot of stupid shit, and it was periods of time where I had my license was suspended and revoked and all kinds of stuff, and I'm still driving. I mean, I done a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, and but to a person that probably went to prison and shot people, got shot, and been in the street. Like to a person like that, they look at somebody like me like, damn, you more of a perfectionist than I am. But um, the thing is that I do understand it's people that, like, for example, what I think is people have a God mind. I look at it as like people have like kind of a God mind. Like everybody has, they say, basically everybody is a creation from God, right? Hypothetically, theo what is that, theologically speaking, everyone came from creation of the creator, right? So having that God mindset or that perfectionist mind is from God, right? Whatever you call him, right? So I think that's the center of it. And I think people try to be as perfect as they possibly can. And I see people on a day-to-day basis that they try to be perfectionists. They try to be as perfect as they possibly can. Now, some people can do that easier than others. Some people, just because the position that they have in life based off of their race or their ethnicity, they have maybe an easier time to do that, or easier experience to do that. But even black people, I know black people that I went to school with, that I know, that I work with while I was in high school, and it's like, they, are doctors. It's like they were in honors society or honors taking honors classes, high school. And then there's some people that it's a chick that I went to high school with that I had a crush on, that that last time I talked to her, she was trying to sell me some multi-level marketing vitamins or something like that. And she was on welfare collecting, uh, basically government subsidies and child support for her. I think she had like 3 or 4 children or something like that. So it's levels to it, but she did graduate. She got her degree. She did get a degree, but she was in honors. She was in the honor society in high school. So your scholarship in school doesn't necessarily all the time correlate to your success in real life, but usually those things correspond with one another, but not it's not nothing is 100%. But yeah, most people, they try to be. I think some of the most successful people, if you really study them, they try to be as perfect as they possibly can. Look at YouTubers. Look at some of the YouTubers. The success. If you think about the successful YouTubers or the most successful YouTubers, they try to be as perfect as they possibly can. They try to have everything like it's a craft, like it's perfection. Me, I go on live stream on a fucking old ass phone in StreamYard at 12 o'clock at night or 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and I give zero fucks about who cares about that or not, or how it's going to be received, how many views I'm going to get, how many. Viewers, I'm live viewers I'm gonna get. I give two shits. But a perfectionist, they care about everything. They would care about every little detail. And that is very important. I do respect that. I respect the perfectionist. I understand, okay, when I talk to someone, I can tell if they're a perfectionist or not. They're going to respond different, they're going to even look different. Their behavior is different, the way they live their life is different, and I can tell perfectionists when I see one. Usually this is how it goes with perfectionists. Typically, perfectionists come from parents that were, to a certain extent, they were perfectionists themselves, or they were above the standard of the average a person of their peer group. They did some extraordinary things that most people don't do. And then, the children of those parents grow up, and then they try to basically do some extraordinary things in their life. And, usually that consists of going away to college, getting a career that is high paying, very lucrative, and they try to do certain things. They try to make sure that finances is together. Don't take many risks. Don't go out and be a baby mama per se, or try to avoid being that. That is usually something that a characteristic of mostly women. The women try to do that. Some of the men might have a harder time with that because men are horny as fuck. So we might make a mistake and choose someone that we shouldn't have chose, but then we try to get it together and rebound from that. But usually, even men that are perfectionists, they tend to pick right out of the gate. They pick the right person, and then they go get married, and they have a stable relationship, a stable marriage, and it tends to work out. It's not perfect, but they try to work it out. Okay, they try to keep it together as best as they can. But yeah, um, perfectionists. I can tell people that are very perfectionists or very much are perfectionists is very simple. Usually people that are perfectionists, they have something that grounds them, maybe like a religion, some type of organization, or something like that. You when I think of that, you probably are already thinking in your head certain religious groups like Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses, it's a lot of things that they can't do. They can't associate with other people. They have to go to the Kingdom Hall. They have to um, do certain things for the Kingdom Hall. They have to avoid certain things, avoid saying certain things. It's a lot of restrictions, right? That's typically someone that will ideally um, exhibit or try to exhibit a certain level of perfectionist. Not to say that all Jehovah's Witnesses are perfectionists, but usually they are. They try to exhibit um, that type of mentality. I got family members that are Jehovah's Witnesses. That's how they try to get down. But um, they typically follow a certain type of blueprint, and that blueprint pretty much enables them to have certain levels of successes. Like typically, a perfectionist would, when they get the opportunity to have a decent career or job, They hold on to it. They keep working the job until they ultimately retire. They make right financial moves. They, have very decent credit because they've made very good financial moves, and they live above most of their peer group. Like for example, I got family members that they don't even make that much money. They haven't made that much money in their career, but they made the right decisions that have led them to a lifestyle and a certain level of cash flow that most of their peer group do not have. They're not saddled with debt. They're not. They're not in arrears of any type of child support or anything like that because they got responsibilities outside of their marriage or anything like that. They pretty much have a surplus, not rich or super wealthy or anything like that, but they have a surplus. They have comfortable retirement accounts, certain investments that give them cash flow every month. They have more than the average person. Like they have more than the average person even in their peer group. Because the average, like for example, the average baby boomer is doesn't like 25% of baby boomers are still, I think it's over 25%, but most I don't know what the percentage. Let me look up the percentage of baby boomers that are still working. Let me look this up here because I'm interested in it to know. I know it was like something about like one in four baby boomers. Um, let me see here. How many baby boomers are still in the workforce? Are still working? Let's just say that working. Let's see. So yeah, so the baby boomers are like 26% of the workforce. Okay, so like one out of every boomer is still working. Is still in the workforce. One out of one out of every four workers is a boomer that's still working. And for the record, most boomers, the age range of boomers is 60 to 78 years old. So I think like typically retirement is like 60 something, 65. So most of the boomers technically speaking should be retired. But according to statistics, one out of every four workers is a boomer. Okay? That's a significant percentage. So I mean, like for example, there's a lot of boomers that can't retire. They have too much debt. I got another family member that's what his situation is. He can't afford to retire. He's had financial problems and financial issues, throughout his life. He just bought a house. He can't retire. He can't afford to retire. And to a certain extent, he's lived his life based off of trying to be a perfectionist as well. But people try to be perfectionists, but ultimately they're not God. They're not, perfect. So they're going. Everyone is going to make mistakes. Okay, and it might hurt others more than it might hurt some people more than others, but they're going to make mistakes. Everyone is going to ultimately make mistakes all the time, regularly. So even though you try, and people try to be perfectionists, they fall short it many times over. So yeah, that's a significant thing. That's very, very significant. But that's typically how they roll. I mean, if they're working, they're trying to basically be the best they can at their position in their career. They're trying to work the job and get as much out of it as they possibly can, as well as set themselves up to be financially secure, and also being, financially secure in their retirement, because they know retirement is coming, and they want to prepare for that. They want to prepare their children, for their college. Yeah, I know people that a lot of people do this. It's pretty standard, but a lot of people, it's only so it's certain people that are perfectionists, and then some people are not. You can kind of tell for the most part someone that is a perfectionist and how they dress, how they talk, how they act. I can tell. I don't know about anybody else, but I can typically tell certain people that are perfectionists. I mean, basically, if you all around the suburbs, if you around the suburbs, you can spot them. They're all in the suburbs. Okay, the perfectionist. So basically, yeah, the perfectionist loves to live in the suburbs. They love to live in cul-de-sac communities, gated communities. They love the suburbs. For whatever reason that is, they absolutely, perfectionists enjoy, they thrive in the suburban environment. Okay. And there are tons of them competing with each other and living with each other, and in these perfectionist bubbles. Okay. That's what I notice. Okay. Because I frequent different places, doing different tasks, doing different work, and that's one of the things that I notice is that they definitely love the suburbs. Perfectionists enjoy the suburbs. Not to say that they don't live in the city environments or urban environments too, but they typically love middle rung, or I won't even say middle rung, middle to upper middle to definitely upper class. They love those areas. They thrive in those areas. They're they're around other people like themselves. They love the suburbs. Okay, so it's the thing is this: can you change yourself to be more of a perfectionist? Um, I think it's possible, but typically people have behaviors that are set, and those behaviors are, they're just like they said, they're your behaviors. Whatever your behavior is, that's just kind of how that is. Now there are certain things that are at play. It's people are targeted. You know, people are targeted individually, right? People are targeted to try to get them to get thrown off course, or whatever the case may be. That does happen. That does play a role. You know, in people, kind of struggling in life and stuff like that, or having continuous struggle. Because one of the things about, let's just say, and I think, yeah, I was definitely thinking about this today as far as the whole perfectionist thing. One of the things about white people in America is there's two things. They pretty much get left alone, and they get basically acceptance from their group, their peer group, right? They get cultural acceptance, as well as they get to be, tend to be left alone. Typically, I mean, not saying, okay, every racial group or demographic, they compete with one another and they have violent crimes that they, deal with one another in different crimes, and they attack each other, right? I mean, but for the most part, typically, if you're, pretty much white, you get a certain level of acceptance, and you get to be left alone. You get that career, you get that salary, the corporate bonus, and possibly stock options and so on and so forth, based off of the fact that you have that privilege of being in this particular group, and different certain entitlements come with those things. They're not necessarily guaranteed to everyone, but for the most part, that's one of the things that is very, very valuable. Those two things, that acceptance, and as well as being left alone to be able to do what you need to do, and have some type of peace while you're doing it, right? Well, other groups don't necessarily get that. Hispanics have to deal with a certain level of being unaccepted or being even targeted, right? You're seeing that now with the whole immigration thing. Black people know, for they saying it for infinitum, that we are very much discriminated against, and targeted, and definitely not left alone, and also in many regards not accepted. Okay, a lot of people, a lot of non-blacks and even blacks gaslight that very notion, as to say that no, you're not no one's targeting you, and there is no racism, and there is no body denying you anything that you can't get for yourself. And it's you could call it cultural gaslighting, but it is a thing. It's very obvious. It's something that I noticed since I was a little kid. Okay, growing up in the '80s, being called nigger, go back to Africa, when we lived in a all white city that basically turned into a black city from the '80s to the '90s, which was Dalton, Illinois. I've experienced that. It was kind of weird. You know, you just be driving in the car, mom driving to go to Wendy's or go to the grocery store, and you see some passing people, some white people say, go back to yell out their car, go back to Africa. And it's funny because, I mean, I haven't heard that in a long time. I actually haven't heard that, and I wonder how people would feel, how black people will actually feel about that now, because a lot of black people don't. This is the, like, because of the whole psyop with Tariq Nasheed, and whether he's an agent or not. The whole thing is, a lot of black people are psyop to death to not believe that they actually are African anymore. Not to say that when I was a kid, it was definitely, it was a family that I grew up with. I ain't gonna say any names. They definitely, in the '80s, well before, I don't know how old Tariq Nasheed. I don't know if he's older than me. I think Tariq is older than me. But well before this whole FBA 80 stuff, it was black people that definitely identified more as being an Indian versus being an African or whatever, or having any African origin whatsoever. That's why, basically the whole what is the movie? What's that movie? Minute, not Minister Society. Boys in the Hood. And they had the scene where the boy was like, "I'm not from Africa. I'm from Crenshaw Mafia. I ain't no African booty scratcher or whatever." Like, yeah, I mean, that movie came out in the late '80s. Okay, Boys in the Hood, I believe, came out in the late '80s. At the very least, very early '90s, maybe '91, '90. But I believe it came out in like '89. But I'm not sure about that. But nevertheless, I mean, yeah, that was a thing. Those cultural critiques were around in the late '80s. I remember, like I said, the kids that I grew up with, the family that I grew up with, they definitely identified more as being an Indian. Not to say that black people don't have Indian DNA or blood, they do, because basically the Indians traded slaves as well. They were part of America had sold slaves. Slaves were on the market. So if you were an Indian, you could go to the market and buy slaves. Now, what did the Indian do with those slaves? Very interesting. The the funny thing about that is that what the Indians did with those African slaves was a little bit different than what the Europeans did. Okay, in America. So what the Indians would do was they would take these slaves and integrate them in their tribe. Now, the women were basically forced to obviously sleep with these Indian chiefs and these Indian men, right? These Native American Indian tribes, whatever, they were forced to, basically breed with these men, with these Indians. And the men were given the option to be a warrior or be part of the Indian society and work his way from the bottom to whatever rank that he could possibly go to, basically through fighting. Okay. And yeah, once that black African slave proved itself in that Indian tribe and worked his way up, they would basically go, they were still going to war with the Europeans, okay, with the settlers. So they would literally use these African slaves to fight the Europeans, to fight the settlers, which was, I don't know how they worked that out, or what they did not, did they ultimately deny these Indians to be able to, buy African slaves? Because you got to understand, I mean, they're not dumb. Okay, they going to battle and they seeing all of these black faces. Not to say, it is the other argument is that there are black people all over already over here from that migrated from Africa and already was in North America. Yeah, that is true, but it wasn't a large percentage as they say, as a lot of these people that call themselves people, they call themselves Indians, but they're really kind of pretendians, because they identify as if a lot of these people, they have an identity complex based off of them not being proud about their African heritage, even in the midst of African transatlantic American slavery. They're very basically embarrassed by their history. Very they're not really proud about that. Like they in history programs us to not to portray, because basically the history books in high school and or just basically K through 12, even probably even college, they don't. the narrative in the history of slavery is basically blacks were always just depressed and in slavery, and then some escape. That's the history of slavery. But the true history of the transatlantic slavery and the slavery history in America was, it was a lot of different things going on. There was a lot of moving parts, and it was a lot of slave basically revolts. Actually, a lot of the slave masters, they had nightmares of getting waken up by their slave, and basically getting greeted with a blade to their neck, because it was many insurrections and slave revolts that happened throughout the South and different parts of the slave holding states in America. And one of the biggest insurrections was actually an island, in Haiti. Haiti literally was basically in they don't really talk about this much in history. Even in grammar school, I don't believe at all that they portrayed. I don't remember at all that they actually gave the history, the true history of Haiti. They didn't mention Haiti, I don't think, at all, as far as the actual story of basically Haiti overthrowing the slave class. I mean, the slave master class in Haiti, actually bloodily killing all of the slave masters, as well as anyone that even looked like them. They was killing any and every aspect of the slave master class, including the mulattoes. They killed them too. They didn't talk. I don't remember at all that story coming up in the history books when I was going through school, through K through 12 school. Basically kindergarten to high school. So they omit a lot of history. So, but from that omission, because people don't educate themselves, they got that history and the damage was already done. So a lot of the average black person has an inferiority complex, one, and it's based off of them getting browbeat every year that they were a slave and they didn't do anything else, and they just were depressed slaves that some of them ran up north and escaped freedom. That's the narrative, and they don't know anything about the Indian aspect of it, because they don't teach that in school. They don't teach about the islands, and they had slave revolts in South America and Brazil. They had maroons in South America. They had maroons in Jamaica that fought the British. It was slave revolts all throughout the West when it came to the transatlantic slave trade. Even the story of Amistad. Amistad was based off of a true story. They actually overthrew these Portuguese or Spanish slave traders, and basically took over the ship, and it sailed to the Americas. Okay, that was a true story. See, that I didn't get that story till I was an adult. Amistad came When Amistad came out, I was already an adult. That story was not told in high school or grammar school about Amistad, Africans taking over a ship and killing some of the um, sailors on that ship, or slavers on that ship. They didn't say anything about that in uh, basically history class in K through 12 education. So most of black people are they have the damage was already done because they were miseducated. Part of the history classes or history basically curriculum is miseducation. Okay, so most black people come from miseducation because they're indoctrinated and lied to in many regards, and even lied by omission certain histories that were basically left out of the history books in K through 12 education and even beyond. So the average black person doesn't know true history, and when you don't know true history, you will have certain complexes. You will try to look for something that is positive that you can cling on to. And for that case is the whole Indian story. Again, not to say average black person, even white folks, because the Indians used to kidnap white settlers. They would kidnap the women, and then basically they would basically be breeder females for the Indian tribes. Okay, or kept held captives, basically sex slaves for the Indian tribe. So all most even European, even white Americans have Indian uh, ancestry in their bloodlines. Okay, African Americans definitely have that. Like I said, because of the history, But the thing is that that doesn't omit the fact that you also have African DNA, African bloodlines directly from Africa. So the whole just to omit your entire African history and just say you're just a full-blooded Indian is absolutely insanity, and that's why a lot of them are not taken serious. I mean, a lot. If you notice, a lot of these people, if you look at them, the makeup of them are weird. You can see the crazy, you can see the insanity and the weirdness in their behavior and representations. Because just to omit the entire slave narrative and story and history is absolutely malarkey. It's like it's like taking uh just wiping out history because it doesn't favor you because you weren't educated on what actually happened. And then even here's the thing, right? I educated myself beyond American history. I educated myself on what was going on back in Africa. Did you? I mean, like when I found out that Africans actually, uh, basically African Muslims in North Africa, West Africa, and in Southern Europe were basically enslaving Europeans, that blew my mind. And it was like, well, kind of in a way, the Europeans turning the table on Africans and enslaving them in the West is like basically kind of what goes around comes around. It was like, basically their get back. But most people don't even know that, or they would say that the Arabs had a strong influence, and they did. They trade. They were part of the slave trade as well. But there were Africans all in Europe, and there were Africans before the Arabs came into Europe. But they don't talk about this stuff in history. So the average black person in America is completely clueless, and from that cluelessness, they have inferiority complexes, and also they want to cleave toward the victor, because they have an inferiority complex based off of their African origin. Yeah, I'm to the degree or another a perfectionist myself. Okay, touche, touche. I mean, I do not deny that I am to a certain degree, a certain level of perfectionist. My perfectionism is a little different, but yeah, to a certain degree, I am. I do try to. I will say I do try to stay out of trouble. I try to make sure I can get some healthy rest. I try to make sure I can be as healthy as I possibly can. I struggle with that just like anybody else, but yeah, I definitely am. I have very much a level of perfectionism in that I practice on a day to day basis. I wouldn't be where I am as far as in life if I didn't fight to try to do something to hold myself up because man, I mean, it's rough out here, but the thing is that a true perfectionist, they wouldn't have taken the risk that I've taken, and they probably would, most likely, typically, like I say, they would try to use the credit route, get a mortgage, live in a middle class suburb somewhere, and try to have some type of family life. That's the typical path that most people make, including black people. Okay. And again, for somebody that kind of veered off path so many times and had a lot of issues in my adult life as well as my childhood, that was a little rough. Okay, trying to do all of that, as well as trying to figuring things out real late, and trying to play catch up or trying to catch up or have some type of solid foundation. It's it's not easy, but yeah, a lot of people. It's people that ain't never fell off. Like it's people that from high school to college, or they start the workforce, they ain't fell off at all. Like it's people that they might have been let go from a job or whatever. It's people that didn't had the same job for like 20 years, 15 years, definitely 10 years or more. And they have a certain type of life from that. They got a wife that um basically uh you know makes the same amount of money that they make, or if not more, and they both combine their incomes to live a pretty good lifestyle. And that that's something that's very important, because the thing is like when it comes down to it, like you really those things are important. And a lot of times what people think, and when they think about a white guy, like when even black people, black women, when they think of a white man, they think that the white man is paying all the bills. Typically households, even white households, there's a combination of the man and the woman, the husband and the wife, basically paying the bills. It's not like people have this a lot of black people, especially black women, have this like grandiose or superior viewpoint that they look at white men as if they're all just a hundred percenters that take care of all of the bills and all of the responsibilities. Mo- it's a reason why it's called Dutch. It's not called African. It's called Dutch. 50-50. That's why it's called that. It's literally called Dutch. And a lot of white people practice Dutch, which is like the guy pays the mortgage and the utilities, the wife pays for the groceries and other things that come up. Like, for example, kids are going back to school, the wife will foot the bill for the kids' clothes and the kids' school supplies and everything related to the kids. The kids' uh, dental visits, medical exams and visits. That's how that typically works. It's not just some, white male provider that's taking care of everything. That's not to say that they don't have that type of reality, I mean, as well as black men. Like my grandfather, that's what he did. He was a millionaire. Of course, he paid for everything. When he had it. And there was times where my grandma had to help out. She had to go get a job, and after he closed his business and went to basically sell insurance and ultimately be a substitute teacher post retirement. But the thing is that uh yeah, I mean, most white families, they combine their incomes, and they do that to live their whatever lifestyle they have. That's just typically how that works. So I say all of that to say that yeah, I mean, I think about that from time to time because uh I had, women that I was with, before I got married, that I know for a fact I would have had a better lifestyle with that woman, or different women that I could think of. I would have had a more successful, upper tier lifestyle if I had the, help, if I had the, um, the right woman that, had some type of a combination of just, kind of like a helpmate, and also someone that is maybe equal or better to me as far as my knowledge on different things like finance, being balancing certain bills and budgets, combining certain budgets and bills, and combining income, financial planning, things of that nature. Like, I know for a fact, I mean, it would have been a totally different scenario versus, just the warrior king. Like I say from time to time, it's just like chess, and I haven't, I like chess, but I haven't been playing it regularly. But I play it from time to time, and I definitely think about it from time to time. And my philosophy is still as such. Like, when you are single and you're a single male, I mean, I'm not saying you can't kick ass. Many men have kicked ass being by themselves and going out and seeing what the world has to offer and trying to do as best as you can to get out of the world what you can. But in many regards, it's men that have had a woman by their side that helped them get to that journey. Even if it's just she's, cheerleading you on, you know, giving you some congratulatory head every now and again. And of course, pussy, you know, um, that cheerleading is very important. That safe space, you want to even say, where you got somebody that's living with you, and y'all helping each other out. That is value, and that is something that helps you spring forth every day and try to do better. And someone that obviously is, like I say, a helpmate as well, that is way better than being this warrior king, this warrior solo king, trying to slay everyone and including the world and get what you want out of it. Like, no queen nowhere in sight, you just this warrior solo king trying to take on the world. That's why a lot of men, I mean, not to say, the solo warrior kings out there ain't kicking ass. I mean, I definitely am out here kicking ass, but and I ain't necessarily in a certain sense. I don't really truly look at myself as just this solo warrior king. I mean, I do have women in my life, whether, I got different women in my life, whether it be, whatever the case may be. But the thing is, I ain't necessarily with them, or, like that. But the thing is being a warrior solo king. I'm not saying you can't go out here and kick ass and slay and everything like that, but for the most part, you know, it's a lot easier when you got a queen, you know what I'm saying, out here trying to slay dragons and shit, trying to make, something out here for yourself, And a lot of women, they don't understand this too. Like they really fucking up too. Like they they trying to create some new paradigm where they're, independent and single and telling men what to do or telling a boyfriend or the men in their lives what to do, and then trying to wear the pants in a relationship, and then they go break up, and then they single, and then they crying, wondering why no man is able to stay with them and all of that. I mean, they having a hard time, and of course, um, I don't really never necessarily know what the future is going to hold. I mean, you know, things are kind of crazy right now, economically speaking, even technologically speaking, with this AI stuff. I mean, it's not necessarily scary. It's not scaring me. AI does not scare me. Like I ain't gonna even lie. My job right now, I totally know AI can take my job. I mean, what I do right now for a living, I don't really make that much, but it's mostly, it's nice. It's some nice perks from my position versus what I was doing before. Like, basically, I make like $7 less than I normally used to make. But I used to have to get my ass up every single day, get on a train, get in my car, go to work, and then come back, do the same thing, go back home, right? Like, I literally, I don't give a shit. You can keep that $7 to be able to like work from home more. Not saying I work from home every day. I don't have a fully remote job, but I mean, the thing is like the stress level of trying to be on site every single day, and what I'm saying, all of that, all of everything that comes with that. It's yeah, I rather I yeah, I rather make, I wouldn't mind making a little less to have more, remote work, or less office on site work, right? But I say all of that to say that yeah, my job now, what I do, like the going on the stuff I used to do on site, like manually installing computers. A robot would have to do that, but AI wouldn't necessarily take that job. But what I do now, definitely AI. Matter of fact, it's so tripped out. Like, and I went to school for programming. Like, I went to university for programming. My actual boss, she literally wants me to help. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally, she wants certain things automated. Like my boss now, when I first started, she knew, she saw my resume and everything, and it's a dude on my team that's a coder as well. She literally wants us to come up with some type of like, yeah, like automated task creation, or let's just say task completion tool, to literally to automate what we do manually. And I ain't gonna lie, like I have I have kind of the root code of how of what's needed to basically get this accomplished. I haven't tried it out yet, and you need to have some source code to kind of to use it as conjunction with this automation tool, software tool. Like I say, I totally know that what I do, half of what I do, definitely half can definitely be replaced by AI. I mean, I knew it the first week I started working. I'm like, damn, I know this. I know what I do. As far as these tickets that I get, because we get a lot of tickets to basically add software to people's program. So basically, we add software to people's accounts. Any software that gets requested, we actually push them out. Man, I know for a fact, absolute fact, that could be automated. Now the phone calls, the support, that's a little bit more complicated because people need real time answers and they need human communication. They don't really want no AI assistant. But I mean, for the most part, like, yeah, half of my job, that what I do normally from the day to day basis, definitely can be replaced by AI, for sure. Matter of fact, they could bring in somebody if they wanted to. They could bring a consultant in with hard, basically some very, um, like with some certain skill sets. So as far as automation and machine learning, that's what they do for a living. They on a day to day basis, they could bring them in for probably like 90 days. They could have basically what we do manually. They can have it implemented in AI or basically automated, probably 90 days or less. Probably, I would say it probably could be done probably in 60 days for sure. But the thing is like, yeah, I mean, that stuff don't scare me, but it is out here. It is taking people's jobs for sure. It is, taking people's ability to. It's like closing out certain positions that normally would have required workers, like human capital, to do these jobs. Like, I'm gonna tell you a story in relation to this. You know, I was working for this company when I first started working in IT, like back in like 2008. Like, this was like my first railroad job, and the company I worked for, it was a company that had kiosks that basically were for logistics. Like, basically, if a truck come into a railroad yard, they used to have it where it would be people that would get them like a receipt for billing, to tell them, to let them know what trailer they went to, what yard, what train yard to go pick up the container, and then they, go get the container, and then they will bobtail in, and then get this, like, this, I think it was called a J bill. They would get this slip, and then they go pick up their container, and then they'll go out the gate and go on, and wherever they need to go to drop the load off. Well, they took all them people out. This was like 2000. This was 2008. This was 2008. All them people, they either they hired a few of them to work for our company because they had a lot of knowledge. They had a lot of knowledge as far as the back end systems that the railroad yard used, and a lot of different. They had a lot of different knowledge as well. Um, but like, yeah, like more than half of them went to work somewhere else. They were let go. They only needed so many people, so they turned a system that was manually ran by humans, giving them a bill, a lading to go pick up these containers in the railroad yard, Opening the gate, pressing the button to open the gate so the train, the truckers would come in the gate in the railroad yard. They took that out and implemented kiosks where a trucker will bobtail into the train yard and press a button, put their information in, and then the kiosk will print out that J bill for them to go and pick up their container, and then they scan that same ticket to go out the yard. Man, that eliminated all of them manual, the all of them human workers, and this 2008, and we worked in an office that was like, I want to say about probably a quarter of a mile in distance from the actual kiosks that basically was gates. They were gated, controlled by the kiosk. The gate was controlled by the kiosk, and then we manually could open the gate. If we needed to open the gate, like it was emergency, it was a time. I'm gonna tell you a story about how it was emergency, and we had to actually close the gate, and I was the one that did it. I was the one that did it. But basically, yeah, we were working in. We had video cameras on the kiosk, and any of the truckers had any issues, they would have to contact us. We'll let them in, and they had to come to the office and then sort everything out and get everything, straight. Man, these truckers, when it first started, they were so pissed off by this new technology, and they were so used to dealing with people getting a manual, J bill, going to go pick their container up, then trying to, because a lot of truckers are not that smart. A lot of truckers are, blue collar, a lot of blue collar people. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of blue collar people are, they're a certain type of person, and they typically are non-technical. They don't, and they know it. They know they're not good with technology. The concept doesn't wrap around their brain. Um, they're not good with certain things. Like they're good with doing manual labor, and they know it. When it comes to dealing with IT and technology, it's a certain level of manual labor that's involved, but it's usually mental labor. You're using your mind to do certain things that involve technology. When you know what I'm saying? So it's like when they had to deal with this new technology and these kiosks, man, they was going crazy. First few months, man, these truckers was pissed off. They was having problems with the kiosk needed regular maintenance. We had to come out there, in the cold, and and install some paper or fix a jam, or you know reboot the kiosk or whatever. But the thing is, they eventually figured it out, and they worked the kinks out of the system and all of that type of stuff. But this was a software system, that was basically, they had a programmer, a lead programmer, that was the main person that installed these systems. And even him, I remember him telling me, man, you learn how to code on the job. The school learning is just, for you to get the job, but you learn everything on the job training. You learn everything out in the field. But the thing is, like, yeah, that was 2008, bruh. They were implementing this back in then. Okay, I was part of it. I was part of the group that basically managed these automated gates, computer automated gate systems, in case any, basically any human error. We were in the office monitoring these gates, and just, basically we could authorize them to come in the gate and then come in the office and stuff like that. But it was still a human element to it, but it was just dealt with technology. It was behind computer screens. But anyway, like, it was the story that I had to close the gates. So it was this, this is a white couple. All right. So for whatever reason, this man, he was going through a divorce or a breakup or something. Man, his wife or baby mama came in that railroad yard. She tailed somebody else behind somebody's car. Like she doubled, like before the gate went down, she went through the gate. Man, the security was trying to locate her, and she was trying to get out the gate. Man, I closed that gate manually. I hit that button closed that damn gate, and the security guard was able to apprehend her, and the police got called and everything like that, man. But man, I remember the look on her face when that gate closed real quick. And yeah, I was the one. Everybody was cheering me on and shit. Like, 'cause I hit that motherfucking gate as fast as I could and close it, so she couldn't get out that gate. Um, but I don't know. I don't know what happened after that. But yeah, she was. They was trying to. She was trying to get out that gate, man, and get away. I think she had hit some. She hit one of the truckers. So it was like people that was working in the railroad yard. They were they were called like spotters or something like that. So they would assist in moving containers. I forgot what they was called, but she had hit one of those trucks that was in the yard, and she was trying to get away. But man, I hit that damn button, man. That gate dropped so fast she couldn't. She either was gonna have to hit that gate or like go through it, which she could have done, but she ain't do that. She just yeah, she was stuck, and the security guard was the BNSF security was right behind her. So I had closed that gate real quick, so he was able to apprehend her. But I mean, yeah, this is 2008, man. Computer technology taking over jobs. So we are now going into 2026. I mean, this is going. It's not digressing. It's progressing. So it is a thing. So a lot of these women, people, both men and women, losing their jobs. A lot of women losing their jobs. And they need jobs. They need jobs to be independent, and mainly independent of men. And they know that. In order for them to be independent of men, have their feminist dream, they have to have a job. That's why I say, I mean, I'm no different than anybody else. I mean, definitely a financial channel as well. I say wholeheartedly. I don't even need to, what I'm saying, look in any stats or anything like that. I don't know that much about feminism, first wave, second wave, third wave, fourth, five, do the wave. I don't know nothing about that. But what I do know is definitely there is a link between or interchange between feminism and capitalism. Without capitalism, feminism does not work well. And even feminists know this. Feminists know this for a fact. They know this hands down. It's in the books. It's in their books. Then they know it. Without capitalism, you can't have feminism. Doesn't work. And if you need to find out, get you a passport, go to the DR, go to Brazil, go to um you could go to a lot of places and find out that for feminists to be feminists, they need income. They need money, capital to be independent of men. Absolutely, hands down. Can't have. You know, it's like you can't have one without the other. They need capital to be independent of men. That's why a lot of Kenya, they got feminists in Kenya and Botswana and all kinds of places, but they can't get down with it like they want to Like they envy the American woman or the woman from, different parts of the West, like Canada or the UK, because they have capital in those places where there could be independent of men. They cannot be independent of men in no damn Kenya or Zimbabwe or South Africa, the DR or whatever, anywhere there's not a robust international um capitalistic system. Like, basically the G8. If you look up the G8, I think definitely America is in the G8, Canada is in the G8, Japan, China. Even though I don't know if China is part of the G8, I'm not sure about that because China might be a part of the BRICS. But basically, the G8 is countries that have basically leading world economies. So that would be UK, Canada, United States, Japan, Saudi Arabia, um, Germany, different European countries, Switzerland, it just world emerging, very much leading world economies. Like, yeah, those places have probably the most notable and powerful feminists because they got the capital to work with. That's why simping is such a big deal. I went to war with simps a year ago, and I'm still, I kind of fell off because I just, shit got boring. I got my point across. But simps literally support feminism because basically, feminists need capital. Like, that's how they operate. Without capital, you can forget it. Books is closed. Can't have no, you know, in order to be independent of men, they need to be independent of men. You need money to be independent of, you need money to have independence. Okay. That's the whole idea of it, right? When you left your parents, you became 18 or 19 and you first moved away. What did you need to move away from your parents to be independent of your parents? You needed money to pay that damn apartment down payment and rent in order to be independent of your parents. And then what happened? You fell flat on your face and you took your ass back home and you live with your parents again. If and I'm not saying everybody, but I definitely did a whole bunch of times. And shit, I wish, hell, my parents was alive right now, man. I'll be trying to move in. I'll be trying to move back in. Shit, fuck it. At 40 some years old, I would give two. I would be happy. I'd be happy to. And I'm gonna tell you this. All you young folks out here just, you know, dealing with whatever life brings you, and you feel discouraged because you live with your parents. Man, do not be at all. I would say that's the best financial move you can make because you got to think about it. And then the capitalistic system, the elites or whatever, part of the plot was for you to be independent and go pay to live in some box, which is an apartment, and then pay some rich people that own all these apartment houses, own all these boxes with doors, a bunch of money to pay for rent and making them rich. While you can just live with your parents, save your money, and then go buy you a house or let your parents help you, match your down payment or whatever. So you can get you a house and get you some real estate, build up some equity. Like that was the move from the whole time. Like we got psyop to death by women and society that, oh man, you live with your mama, you live with your mama, you still taking out the trash. Your mama tell you to take out the trash, you gotta do it. She tell you to clean, she's still telling you to clean up your room. We got browbeat and we got discouraged and humiliated the fact that we live with our parents, that was some um delayed adulthood or you not accomplished because you live with your parents. You saving your money, you might even be helping out. Who live with their parents and didn't help out? You know what I'm saying? Most people, you live with your parents, you helping your parents out. You giving them, whatever you provide, and you know what I'm saying, whatever you can, whatever they ask you to, you gonna do the best you can for your parents. So thing is like all of that humiliation and trying to, discourage people that live with their parents because you want to, having a box somewhere with a door and some keys, so you can, you know, live around other people that lived in these little boxes with doors, so you can, have unadulterated sex with your woman and live the life that you want and be independent and quiet and peaceful by yourself. I mean, I get it, but at what cost? The cost was that rent payment every month that you could have been saving and not worrying about what it all goes down to not worrying about what other motherfuckers think about you. When we're younger, when a lot of times when people are younger, they really care about what people think about you. But when you figure it out, like when you get like in your 30s and 40s, definitely 40s, you think about it like, man, who gives a fuck about these motherfuckers, what they think about you? Half of them are drug addicts or alcoholics. They not functionally doing well in life. They broke, you know, and you listen to these people, man, these people, ain't doing well themselves. And it's like you realize you was getting duped, worrying about what these people thought about you and all of that. But yeah, living with your parents, especially for women, that's pretty traditional. Women didn't live, they didn't move out of their parents' house until they got married. That's typically how that works. And for men, the same thing. But we got browbeat to death that living with our parents meant that we were lesser men because we lived with our parents. And that was a total psyop and a total social engineering scheme by the elite for you to go pay some money to live in some box somewhere, some tall building with a bunch of boxes with doors. Like, to be honest, you know, and I'm not the only one that said this before. I think I don't know who said it, but other people thought of the same thing. I'm from Chicago, okay? So we got, just like New York, we got project buildings. We have historic project buildings that are no longer standing. They've been leveled. They start leveling a lot of the project buildings in the early 2000s, like Cabrini Green. That was probably the most famous one, famous project building in the United States that most people know, right? The movie, The Candy Man, and all of that. But to be honest, I look at all apartments like projects. I mean, like the big ones, the big old, like even if the building is like real nice, to me, I'm like, I've been doing DoorDash for years. I hate it. I hate the fact that I got to do Door. I ain't gonna lie to you. I hate the fact that I got to do DoorDash. And when I say I got to do DoorDash, I got to. you know, um, I mean, like, because in a sense, like, I can't turn down the money. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's it just it's who you know what I'm saying, who gonna give you $60 to go, drive for a couple hours? You need that $60. When I no longer need like $60 or $100 to pay a bill to have some extra money, I don't have to do that no more. But the thing is my whole point is I hate apartment buildings. I hate delivering um stuff in apartment buildings. Like, man, people be ordering cases of water, 24 cases of water, 40 40 bottles of water cases. We ordering like two of them. Man, you gotta haul all this crap up these flights of stairs, like two or three levels of stairs, man, and all of that, man. It's like, and then it'd be hard to get in the apartment building, hard to find the apartment building. I hate apartments with them. Like, one thing about me, if you don't know, if you haven't been following me for years or whatever, I hate apartments and I hate paying rent. I hate rent. I hate the fact that black people rent at the highest rate. Like, I don't know if they rent at the highest rate, but black people do rent at a very high rate. Black people statistically are 58%, 50 something percent black. I think like 56 or 58% of black people rent. For whatever reason, we just love paying rent, but or be stuck paying rent. And the thing is like, again, like when I look at apartment buildings coming from Chicago, driving past project buildings after project buildings, they was off the highway. They was like right by, like, Stateway Gardens was like right by where the White Sox used to play. And you see these big long buildings, man, just they was right across the expressway. We driving, going back to the suburbs, seeing these big ass apartment buildings, like, God damn, I'm so glad I don't have to live there. We moved to the suburbs in '85, me and my family. We lived, it was a project building, like on the corner, like right across the street, like literally past the train tracks. Like, I used to live right behind the green line, and over this other side of the green line on the next block over, it was this big old apartment complex. I mean, not apartment complex, project building. It was called the Calumet building. And man, pissy hallways. The elevators always was broke. Cause I hated it. Cause I ain't the only reason I had to go inside this building. My mother, she had, like, basically, my sister had a friend that lived there, Crystal ass. They are all of them successful though. I will say this, like, so Crystal was my friend's sister, and she had basically an older sister and an older brother. They all went to college, HBCUs primarily, and PWIs. They all successful, and they was from the projects. They grew up in the projects, and her older sister, Dennis, or no, she optometrist. And she married a optometrist, I guess, in school or something like that. Her brother, he graduated college, played baseball. He's doing well. They daddy was a drug addict. He was married to their mama, but he was on heroin. I didn't even know he was on heroin till I got older, because my mother, she didn't tell us. She kept it a secret, but when we got older, she told us that, yeah, he was on heroin the whole time. Like, but he would be there, and she was a dutiful wife. Like, his Crystal's mother was named Betty, and she was one of them stern disciplinarians. Like, one of the things about, like, a lot of mothers, they stern disciplinarians, almost like really true matriarchs. Typically that works as far as the kids gon' they almost like a black tiger mom. um because the kids is just so scared of their mama, just get beat, like, belt buckles and all, like, they act up, they literally beat them to success. That does work. That belt, the power of the power of the belt is definitely something I grew up with as well. It definitely does work. I mean, I'm not saying it's 100%. I don't even think it's well, I will say it's a higher percentage because basically that's how the Jackson Five grew up. Joe Jackson was tearing their ass up. And here's the thing, right? Here's the funny thing about the power of the belt, right? So if you want to see the power, if you want to see the magical belt or like one of Joe Jackson's belt, all you got to do is go to the Hard Rock Cafe. Um, it's right when you go to Detroit and you go on off I-80 when it merged into going into Indiana from Illinois. If you stop at the Hard Rock Cafe, they got Joe Jackson's belt on display inside. They got a display for the Jackson 5 too in there. You can see Joe Jackson's belt in a case inside that motherfucking casino, man. And I mean, I took a picture of it. I posted it a whole bunch of times, but man, that shit worked. It worked. He beat the shit out them to success, and it worked. The ghetto is it might sound as barbaric as it sound. It worked. You know what I'm saying? And again, like the women that be like that, the mothers that be like like the black versions of a tiger mom, them kids be successful usually. Like I'm gonna tell you who else was like that, grew up like that. And his daddy wasn't around. He just had older brothers. Isaiah Thomas' mom was like that. She was a very hardcore matriarch. She didn't play. She didn't get. She none of them. Basically stepped out of line. Because she basically was a harsh disciplinarian, and she wouldn't let the neighborhood kids or the gangbangers intimidate her kids either. She had a shotgun. Isaiah Thomas' mother had a shotgun under the sink. She had to pull it out a couple times because the gangbangers on the west side of Chicago was trying to intimidate Isaiah Thomas. He was coming up, he was real good. They knew he was probably gonna go play college ball and all of that. So yeah, she pulled that shotgun out. And I'm gonna say, like, yeah, women that be like that, if they, when they got kids, it usually them the ones that's gonna be successful. Because the women that be trying to be their kids' friend, them the ones that be gonna be crying and shit, talking about I don't know why my baby died and all that. A lot of them they be trying to be their friend. They either going to jail, they gonna get they going they dying. On the 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock news. Because that definitely doesn't work. But yeah, I mean, uh, the thing is that it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know what all this is gonna come as far as all these layoffs and everything like that. I don't think I think people gonna find these a lot of these women are gonna find their way. Um, I'm gonna be honest. I think that obviously, I came from a family of marriage. My parents was married for over 20 years. I definitely know being barefoot and pregnant is the way. I just can't. I would be unwise and I would be foolish to say anything otherwise. I mean, I think women that understand being in the kitchen, in the house, raising children, being barefoot and pregnant, wearing a dress, it's some power in that. And it might sound chauvinistic or even misogynistic or whatever, but a lot of women don't understand the power in that. Like, when my mother, man, she was in the Nation Islam, and they used to literally teach the women how to be wives. They used to have literally, they would have almost like domestication class, like wife school. Like they would literally show the women how to cook for their men, how to cater to their men, how to talk to their men, to their husbands, and take care of the children. They still do this today. Like they teach the women how to, not saying all the women are perfect and they're going to be, angelic, perfect wives, and a lot of women have a lot of rebelliousness to them. I mean, I think it's part of it is animal nature, but the thing is that that's what they do there. It's called the MGC and MGT. Like that, basically, they teach the girls from little girl on up to cater to their husbands and you know take care of children, take care of house, home, cook, clean. They teach these things still today. They're probably the only quote unquote religious or organization that I know of that literally trains women on how to be good partners to their husbands, like to take care of the home, the children, take care of the sustenance in the house, and cook their children and their husband healthy, wholesome, nourishing food because that's important. Because if you feeding your family junk, they're gonna get sick and and probably die early or have health issues. So that's very important. Very, very, like people don't even talk about that. That is extreme. Like nutrition is very, very important. It's a matter of life or death. That's how important it is. So like yeah, they teach to this day. Like that's what they do. And they'll take a woman as a prostitute that's drugged out on the street, clean her up, give her some type of foundation, give her some type of training. I'm not saying she gonna go be fucking Mother Teresa, but she's going to be a better person. That's what they do. They clean the filthiest, dirtiest, nastiest individuals and try to clean them up, straighten them up, and educate them and train them. And the Nation Islam they got a lot of history that they teach too. They teach all of the history of basically what wasn't told about a lot of things as far as the history in America and even be before Africans were in slavery as well. They do a lot of that. Them dudes over there, them people over there, man, a lot of them like super duper, they like super duper geniuses and scientists damn near when it comes to that shit. Man, they be talking about the circumference of the earth and how fast the earth travels through space. Them dudes, man, them dudes, man, run circles around people, man. When all of the stuff they be talking about, man. But yeah, man. I mean, that's what my mother went through, man. She needed that because she, came from basically a situation where her mom, and her dad died, and her mom had to marry someone else, for she needed a provider. She had 5 kids. She needed someone to provide for those kids, so she had to, marry someone else. And a lot of kids, they kind of reject their stepfather, especially if the stepfather is a disciplinarian. They usually gonna, kind of resent their father. They're gonna resent their stepfather, when they stepfather put their foot down and all of that. Like, and my grandfather, he used to cuss people out. He was in the army. He was in the Battle of Cuba. They was about to go to Cuba, man. He was drafted in the army, and he would tell me stories about they were scared as hell because they was dealing with nuclear armament back then. The Russians and the Cubans and the United States, and during Kennedy, and, when he was president, and like they was scared shitless that because they was gonna have to invade Cuba possibly. It was gonna be an invasion, a ground invasion, and they were scared shitless about that because they were dealing with nukes. It ain't like when they the United States, they go into Iraq. You know, it's some incursion. It's some insurgents and all of that, but they ain't gonna get nuked. Well, they had Cuban missiles that was Russian made because Russia was in partnership with Cuba. They had nukes over there. They had literally that was the whole reason for the conflict because it was so close. Cuba is very close to Dominican Republic. Like from Miami to the flight from Miami to the DR was like less than an hour, if not an hour. That's how far Cuba is as well. It's not that far away. It's only an hour away, and they can reach definitely Florida, the whole Northeast with a missile from Cuba, and definitely, trying to do a ground invasion in a country that has nuclear armament, very, very, very hostile, very dangerous. They was able to avoid it, come to some type of agreement or whatever. But yeah, man, my grandfather, he was, he was in the army during that time, and from Mississippi, hardcore dude, one of the most hardcore dudes I ever met and I ever been around. He was like a drill sergeant, but worse. He would cuss your ass out and make you feel like the worst person you could be in life when he cussed your. He would just cut your skin when he cussed your ass out. He ain't had to whoop you. All he had to do was just raise his voice and cuss you the hell out. Boy, he was gonna, you gonna feel little, you gonna feel real small after that, and you definitely ain't gonna try to do whatever he got mad about again. But they hated him, man. They did not like my grandfather. And I call him my grandfather because I ain't know anybody else. My biological grandfather died when my mom was, you know, before she, about around the time she was going through puberty. So I mean, I wasn't around, I never met my biological grandfather. So, they got some type of way about him, but he ain't never hit none of us. I think, yeah, he probably hit me with a belt like one time, but it was almost like it was just almost like just like play damn near. But man, he used to cuss us out, man, and we would be small. You probably want to be hit with a belt after you cut your ass out, man. He would make your ass feel like a fucking little peon after he cussed you out, and he did everybody like that, including my grandmother. I mean, and he had a certain reputation, man, and he ain't play. And he was hardcore, but that they kind of rejected him, so they went their own way and kind of in a way like did their own thing. All of my aunts and uncles, they kind of like went to other groups and organizations because the family wasn't together. You know, my grandmother, she just, she stood down and was kind of somewhat combative, but for the overall, she was submissive to him, and she would try to make sure she pleased him as much as he needed to be pleased. You know what I'm saying? To keep everything together. She had a very good lifestyle. She liked that, and she helped him out. They were both working every day at they had a few businesses that generated a lot of cash flow, and they had to work this business damn near every day for over 30 years. So, um, it worked out, however it worked out. But, my mother, she went her own way and she joined the Nation of Islam and, you know, did that, and then she met my father and the rest is history. But yeah, man, I ain't gonna lie, man. Being barefoot and pregnant, man, probably is the way. I know a lot of y'all can't do that because, I mean, well, you could probably do the barefoot and pregnant part, but with the man, that's where the problem is. You can't find the right man because you weren't taught that, and you don't know how to deal with men because you didn't have a father. Half, probably more than half of women probably didn't have that much interaction with their father, or maybe didn't have their father around at all. So interactions with men is a huge problem. But the barefoot and pregnant part, yeah, they already gotten barefoot and pregnant. But being, I'm saying, be barefoot and pregnant inside of, living with your man, living with your husband. That's the way. That's you know, like I think it's Star Wars or whatever. This is the way. Like that's the way. But that's been the way for thousands and tens of thousands of years. It's not nothing new. You know what I'm saying? It's just societal decay and degradation and social engineering and psyops has convinced women that it's not the way, or is no longer needed to be the way. And that is as someone that plays chess and pretty decent as it, that's how you get sent off to be a loser, to lose. Because the game of chess is just like I just said. You need you need power. You need the king. You need a queen, some knights, some bishops. Right, that's your religious order. That's your spiritual and religious order. And you need housing. You need your house is your castle. Right. You know you need one house and another one. That's your two rooks, right? Then you need your, people around, the pawns, right? And that's how that works. It ain't that shit been going on for man, that shit been going on for tens of thousands of years. It didn't just start in Europe. Like that shit, man, that was in Egypt, man, and all over the world, man. Is you know, that's how that works. It doesn't ain't never gonna change. As a matter of fact, I don't care if America's no longer in existence. It's still gonna be like that. That's still the power. That's the power right there. That's the formation, right? It's always gonna be like that. That's the power. That is the power. And um it's gonna be that. It was like that before I was born. It's gonna be like that after I'm gone. That is the way, you know. But let me get up off of here. I've been talking and saying all kinds of shit, but I've been dropping number gems and number truth bombs all the while I was talking. And like I say, man, that is the way.